We are live. Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to, this is quite an exciting Evolving HR webinar actually, because we've had a record number of people sign up for this one. I'm not sure exactly what that's telling me. I have a couple of theories, but yeah, really very much looking forward to the conversation. What I shall do to start with is I'm going to ask each of my lovely guests to introduce themselves, because I always think that people do a much better job of that themselves than me trying to make something up about everybody. So I'm going to start with Sam. I always want to say what's your name and where'd you come from Brian Day, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to ask each of you in terms of introduction is just to, tell people who you are, and if you worked in HR before, how long did you do that for before you went and did something different? And then what is it that you do now? So Sam, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Sam Eaton. I'm the founder of Mindability. My story is quite different in that I've been in the HR space for almost 25 years now. But the other side, I came into HR from a very commercial side of things, selling HR consultancy services. So I've taken that expertise and experience, and today we help HR consultants around the world to build a successful business on their terms. And that's really important.
God, it totally is. Absolutely. Katie, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Katie Murray from Katie Jo Copywriting. I'm guessing we'll cover a bit more about that later. But in essence, what I do is write websites, emails, LinkedIn profiles, things like that, and typically for independent HR consultants. Before I did that, I worked in HR for about 20 years in-house and then a couple of years as an independent consultant as well. So I've been doing the copywriting thing for coming up to 4 years now.
Wow. Eleanor, I'll come to you next.
Hello, I'm Eleanor Dean. I'm the founder of Face to Face HR. I've been in HR, well, I was trying to work this out earlier, since 1999, which makes me feel really old. I started Face to Face HR in towards the end of 2008, working with small businesses, very keen on very tailored, very pragmatic, very down to earth, not risk averse kind of HR for small businesses. And then after a number of years, I wanted to be able to bring that to more small businesses and also help other people like me to start their own consultancy. So we now operate a franchise model, so HR professionals can start their own consultancy, but they hit the ground running with lots of training and support and resources and mentoring and all of those things. So that's now what I focus on.
Wonderful. And Nikki, last but not least.
Thanks, Kirsty. Hi, everyone. So I'm Nikki Corbishley. I've worked in HR, about 24 years until 3 years ago, very much in generalist roles, also specialising in recruitment, L&D and talent management. And 3 years ago, I really hit burnout, and that's when I set up New HR. And now what I do is I focus on coaching and really focus on helping people avoid burnout and get to a place where they can have a fulfilling career that aligns with their strengths. So I'm quite new to consultancy with my learned colleagues here that have been pros for years, and set up my business 3 years ago.
That's brilliant. And although it's absolutely not about me today, I'm also ex-HR, and I started a year before you, Eleanor. 98 was my first HR role. And I've been fully self-employed now for it's actually just 2 years. So I juggled an in-house HR role part-time with some HR consultancy and coaching until I was ready to step away full-time. So I did that for a couple of years before I went fully out on my own. And I am neither an HR consultant nor a coach anymore. So between us, I think we've got quite different perspectives on this, but come from very similar backgrounds. So I'm hoping that this will be extremely useful to people. We've also got, the same as last week, actually, we've also got over 100 years of HR experience between us. Good God, isn't that terrifying?
It does bring into context some of the things that people put on their websites, though, doesn't it? Oh, we've got 140 years experience. Right, you've got 7 people. Awesome.
Exactly that, yeah. So I'm going to start off. I mean, obviously, HR consultancy is probably the most popular route for people who leave in-house HR roles, and we are going to talk about other options as well. But from a consultancy perspective, Eleanor, I'll come to you first because I know this is your kind of your bread and butter, as it were. But what are some of the misconceptions that HR professionals have about moving into consultancy when they've always been in employment before?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'm going to share two things. I've got a really positive misconception and a slightly more, let's not say negative, it's a realistic one, because I think it's really important to be realistic about this stuff. It's a big step, moving into consultancy. The positive one is something, I had the same misconception, and it's something to do with when you're working in in-house HR, and everybody on the call will know this, you have a constant hurdle to get over in terms of being able to convince senior leadership that you can add value, all the time. It's just there all the time. You're not a profit center, you're a cost center. You want to get involved sooner, you can bring more value. We all know this. And I kind of assumed that would continue as just part and parcel of being in HR. But no, I was pleasantly surprised because, of course, when you're working with business consultants, small business consultants in my case, they don't have to have HR. They're not told this is the HR department, you have to use them. They're making an active, positive choice to engage a consultant, either for an ongoing basis or for a drama that they've got going on or whatever it might be. So when they're choosing to work with a consultant and to work with you specifically, they listen to your advice almost all the time. They have actively sought that input. So they do ask you early and all those things. So you don't actually have to spend ages trying to convince people that HR is a good idea and you can add value, because the people you're working with already know that. So that's brilliant. And that's I discovered it kind of by accident. Oh, this is very nice. I'm not having to constantly get over that hurdle. So that's a good one. On the sort of slightly more wanting to be a realistic side, I would say I see and hear a lot of people who want to do a little bit of consultancy on the side. And I don't think that's a realistic thing to want to do in most cases. Doing it with a part-time job where you have some flexibility, where you have enough time, could be doable. It usually takes longer to get up and running and to get successful. We've had consultants who've done that and some that haven't. And I think they would all say it takes longer, it's more difficult, but it's doable. And that's the right thing for some people. But when you have someone who's saying things like, I'm going to carry on working full-time and just do a bit on the side, it's not going to happen. You just need enough time, headspace to build it up properly. So that's my pluses and minuses.
Both of those points were 100% my experience. So I did, when I first came out, I did come out of in-house HR. I did a year of full-time consultancy, and I did it through a company called People Puzzles, who many of you might have heard of. So it was basically, I think I had 4 clients, and it was like having 4 full-time jobs. Even though they only wanted me 1 day a week, supposedly the WhatsApps were constant. And it was exactly what you said, Eleanor. It's not something you can dip in and out of a day a week kind of thing. No, it was fully consuming. But I can also remember being pleasantly surprised, or actually staggered, by the fact that firstly, people wanted my opinion on things. And secondly, they believed what I told them. And that's, I'm very cynical sometimes about some of my in-house HR career, but that, like you said just now, that battle of like, people don't even want you in the room. There's something about when they've paid for a consultant, they actually assume that you have the expertise. And I can remember thinking, but I'm the same person I was 6 months ago in this organization, but suddenly what I'm talking about is believed and listened to, whereas for the last 20 odd years, I felt like I was constantly trying to justify my existence. So those are excellent points, and absolutely my experience too. Sam, what are your thoughts on that? So you work with a lot of HR business owners. What do you think are some of the misconceptions that people often have?
I agree with everything Ellen has said. And there's another aspect to this now, which is time is money. As before, when you were in-house and you were called into all of these meetings, can you just? Well, that can you just is now costing you. So putting the boundaries in place with a client from the outset, and that mindset shift from to what everyone has said, I'm the person that people didn't want in the room, to I am now being paid to be in the room. Time is now money, but please don't sell time, sell value. And the other thing is the importance of these boundaries, getting really clear on what you're offering, how you're offering it, what that looks like, and over communicating is so important. So I'd say that those two things, an extension of what Eleanor said from the time perspective, and really understanding the importance of boundaries. There's saying yes to everything doesn't get you respected. Saying no, I can do this tomorrow at 10 does.
And somebody's just commented in the chat that I really like that phrase you just used, Sam, the people didn't want HR in the room and now we're paid to be in the room. I think that's really powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Nikki, how about you? I mean, you can speak from your own experience. What do you think surprised you about moving away from in-house HR and
Oh, do you know, exactly echoing what Eleanor and Sam have said. For the first time in my life, I felt valued and people actually thanked you and were grateful for the work that you were doing, as opposed to it just being taken for granted that that's what you did. Got so much satisfaction out of working with clients. And then the other big learning thing for me was I'd very much worked in hospitality sector my whole career, worked my way up. And I couldn't get a job in any other sector. I just got rejected the whole time. Not the right industry, not the right sector experience. The minute I went freelance, I've not worked with one hospitality client. They've all been in completely different industries and sectors.
That is really interesting. I was pigeonholed in financial services, and one of the reasons I did my year of consultancy was to get experience in other industries, and I didn't work with a single financial services industry. And I long had a suspicion that most of the issues were going to be the same regardless. Because you think, how many times were you called along for a job interview and they're like, well, they want someone who's worked, it's particularly law, they need someone who's worked in a law firm before. And you think, well, the employment law's the same, the people issues are going to be the same. It's just that different. It's just different personalities. That's mostly what you're dealing with. But no, that's a really good one. Anything from your side, Katie, that you found that you were expecting and then didn't see?
And I guess I see this because it's where some of the conversations come with my clients now, is there's very often a feeling that you have to start as a generalist, as a consultant, and you can't go and get the projects that you actually want. I'm guessing Sam probably sees some of this when she's talking to people about what is it you actually want to sell, where do you add value, right? There's a massive difference between what you want to sell and the projects that you want to do versus sometimes the ones you end up in. So I know when I first went consulting, I basically did what I'd always done, but in a way that was ultimately theoretically more flexible, certainly much less financially stable, and harder to achieve because you also had to find clients. But ultimately, I was still going out as a generalist, and that's not really what I wanted to do. But I think a lot of people do that. They start out by going out with what's familiar, not necessarily playing to their strengths of who they are in that HR space.
And it's interesting as well, because a lot of organizations, some, and I guess Eleanor and Sam will be able to speak to this as well, some bring in an HR consultant for a specific project or for a higher level of expertise than they have in-house. So they may have an HR operations person in-house, but they need somebody who's got a really good strategic background who could come in and do a transformation project or something like that. And then there are other organizations that bring in a consultant because they want an HR resource. And so then you find yourself with your 25 years experience writing handbooks and policies, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can remember thinking, because I had to do a lot of that in my year, and I can remember thinking, this is one heck of a day rate to have someone write policy. And if that's what you want for that day rate, then I'm not going to complain. But there's that real mixture, isn't there? I mean, do you tend to see that mix, Eleanor, in terms of what companies want?
Yeah, I mean, I would say realistically about 80 to 90% of our clients arrive at our door because they've got some kind of drama happening. of some description.
Yes.
It could be something like, oh, someone's pregnant, I don't know what to do, or it could be some major big issue. But they usually have sort of in the back of their head, they need HR. They usually don't have an internal resource. We do have clients that have an internal resource, and some of the larger ones, but usually they don't. And yes, there is an initial kind of chunk of work normally with a new client, and it usually does involve contracts, policies. Personally, I outsource those to an associate as soon as I could because it's boring. But some people really enjoy doing it, so it's fine. And as long as you check it and you're happy with it, that's fine. But that is part of it and getting things set up. But then it tends to go into something a bit more rewarding, I think, when you start developing a long relationship with that client. You can start actually adding value once they've got the basics in place and set up, and they're as you like them because you've done it or are happy with it. You can then start moving on to working with the client over a long period of time and seeing them really grow. And that's one of the most rewarding things about it for me. I had clients that worked with me for years and years and years, which was lovely. And you see them grow from having 8 members of staff to 68 members of staff and moving to different premises as they grow, and then being really excited to show you their new unit they've just opened and all of this stuff. And it's fantastic seeing that growth and being part of it. I've digressed slightly, sorry.
No, gosh, absolutely fine. I mean, I always want these to be conversations, and I don't want to. I do circulate questions in advance, but somebody's already asked a question that I'm actually going to jump in with in a sec. But Sam, did you want to add anything there before I do that?
Yeah, I did. And I think there's another point, Eleanor's just explained beautifully the fact that this is still a relationship, whether you are going from a corporate job, an employee, however you call it. All that's changing is the vehicle that you're using to deliver your services. Your services are now your expertise. How many years have you been at that table telling people what to do and not being listened to? How many years did you have to coach, cajole, and really push and drive for change? How much did you spend to get those resources and those qualifications to deliver the great work you've done? All that's changing is the vehicle that you're using to create your business. So is it scary? Yes, it is. But I think taking that into account, and to Eleanor's point, you're building some of these new relationships in order to demonstrate and for someone who doesn't know you to really see your worth, to go and get some of the more exciting work that you really want to deliver down the line.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a great point. So the question that somebody has asked, and this is a big one, question from Catherine. What did you do to quell concerns about financial stability shifting to self-employment and consultancy? I'm afraid to take the leap because of that financial uncertainty. And I don't suppose there's a single person on this call who hasn't had that before. So let me ask you, I mean, this is an interesting one, and I know what I think about this, but I want to ask what you think first. So, Nikki, let me ask you that one first.
So I actually didn't plan to go into consultancy. I left my job, I resigned and went, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And that's when I ended up freelancing. So basically I had my 3 months notice pay to live off and the support of my wonderful husband. What I then did as I started to build my business slowly was take associate work so that I could get some quick income, and also through agencies get some project work. So I went along and helped with a collective consultation for a factory that was closing, and it wasn't stuff that I really wanted to be doing, but it gave me that income to start building my business.
That's a great call, actually. And I think if anybody wants to follow up with any of us, when I post the recording of this on the app, I also put everybody's LinkedIn links as well, because it's just, if you want to have a chat with people, I know that they're probably going to be open to that. So, Katie, how about you from the financial stability side?
So I think similar to Nikki, it wasn't necessarily the plan that I was going to go into consulting in the first instance. I had some personal issues. I was working for a business where I was like, I can't really see where I'm going to go, because I had a head of department in there who wasn't really going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So there was a piece of that in there. So I had some savings in the background, not massive, but then I was lucky enough to land some really nice projects with some contacts that I had. That set me up. And then actually when I was retraining to do the copywriting thing, I had that bit to fall back on while I was training and on maternity leave and things to then start to build up the copywriting. So similar idea to Nikki, I guess. You find ways around it of different contacts. And I think if you sort of go, yes, this is something I really want to do, and I do want to make that shift, you have to commit a little bit to, or a lot actually, to making that work. And one of the things that, and this comes back to one of the questions I know you were going to ask later, but Eleanor made a point on a post recently about setting targets and breaking those down into what is more realistic. So actually, if you've got an annual, that's the amount of money I want to hit. What does that mean per month, per week, etc. Having that sort of thing where you can really track how on target or not you are is a very good way of saying, yes, this is going to work or not. And recognizing you probably need a couple of months buffer because you're not necessarily going to get work straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I just very quickly, I think I was very fortunate in some respects, because I'd been made redundant. And so I did have some redundancy money, and that's what I used to do my coaching qualification. And I knew it also gave me a bit of a cushion as I got things going. But one of the things with the People Puzzles model that I did is you don't have to go out and find your own clients. They find your clients for you. So I didn't have to worry about that. A lot of people that I've seen, that I've worked with in the last few years who've made that leap as well, have used their network, their contacts. In some cases, there was one lady that was an old coaching client of mine. She used her husband's business network and ended up doing a lot of work because I think he was an electrician or something. And so he knew a ton of small businesses in the construction industry, and she networked her way around those and got a lot of work through contacts of her husband's, because she'd just never been involved with any small businesses before that might need support. Yeah. So I think there are lots of different ways that we can do it. I'm going to ask Sam and Eleanor in a minute, but from the concerns about financial stability, I don't know if they ever go away entirely, because it's unlikely that you're going to have the same level of financial stability as a self-employed person as you do as an employed person, unless you've got long-term contracts with organizations that are going to last for quite some time, so that you know exactly what you've got coming in. And I know that Sam works with a lot of people who do fractional HR, and they will have those sorts of contracts, but not every piece of work that you get is going to be on a long-term contract basis. So I don't think you can hide from the fact that it is less financially stable for a lot of people on a self-employed basis. Sam, let me just ask your thoughts on this whole question of financial stability.
Yeah, and I think if you go into something like this from a place of fear, it's going to be tougher, right? Are you going to have tough months? Yes, you are. Are you going to have great months? Yes, you are. And my take on it is if you choose to go this route, and I appreciate some people are forced into this route, but if you choose this route, there is a significant opportunity for you to not only replace your corporate income, but excel and exceed that. It does mean your relationship with money changes. We always say to our clients, your aim is to get a 3 to 6 month runway. So because things are seasonal, they might go in peaks and troughs, and you can run with that. I was very fortunate in one of our businesses, we got to 12 months runway. And that's, pretty unusual for a lot of companies, but you can and will replace your corporate income if that is what you want to do. Is it hard work? Yes, it is. Are there going to be tough times? Yeah, there are. But anything worthwhile that you really want in life, you've got to work for it. right?
Mm-hmm.
So embrace the fear and jump out of that aeroplane and pull the parachute, because if you want to touch down softly and have a gentle landing, you absolutely can. But don't let that fear consume you, or the fact that you're seeing a lot of other people doing it. Collaborate, learn, get curious, enjoy it.
Quick question, quick show of hands. How many of you on this panel have had a month since you've been self-employed where you've thought, oh, good Lord, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make all my outgoings this month? And how many of you have had a month where you've thought, oh, good God, that's 3 months worth of outgoings paid in one go?
Yeah. And do you know what as well? I wish I'd known in advance that there would be peaks and troughs so I could enjoy the downtime, because I spent a lot of the downtime in the start just panicking. Whereas now, looking back, you just know it's going to work out if you put all the foundations in place.
100%.
Because this is a business. And I think the other thing, sorry, just one more thing, is that, even if you're a solo consultant, the money you earn, unless you're a solopreneur and you're a sole trader, isn't yours. It's going into your business that will then pay you a salary and everything else. So I think that's really exciting. If you think about it that way, that's pretty grown up, right? You're building something that can, look after you. And I love Eleanor's point, which is you can get to the point where you think, I don't want to do that. I can afford to give that to someone else. And that's so rewarding.
I think
sorry, Kirsty, I just want to upset the comments. You guys are making me want to jump out the aeroplane. Awesome.
Do you mean, Jen, in a good way, like take the leap, or do you mean throw yourself out of the aeroplane? Because I'm really hoping it's the former, not the latter.
Sorry, Eleanor, I cut across.
No, that's fine.
I had to
Don't worry.
comment on that as well. Eleanor, go on. Sorry.
No, don't worry.
Stability, the financial
I think
stability.
there's two things. I think a bit of fear is no bad thing. It can really help the focus. I was in what one would describe as a fortunate position when I first started way back, in that my now ex-husband earned a very good salary. We didn't need my income at all. I'd finished maternity leave, hadn't gone back, so there was no pressure at all. So I spent a lot of time faffing around, not knowing what I was doing. But it didn't actually really matter very much either. And I think I could have done with a bit more feel the fear. So I think that's no bad thing. It can help you focus. I think it's important to be realistic. You're not going to suddenly have loads of income day one. It would be highly unusual. So it's important to acknowledge that and be realistic about it and plan for it. But I think also you can choose to structure your business in such a way as to reduce that instability. If you want to, you can aim to have lots of retained clients. They can obviously, depending on the terms you use, they could still leave, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility, stability, and a bit more predictability. The other thing you can do is not rely too much on one or two big clients, because if you rely heavily on one or two big clients, it's very tempting to get comfortable and think, oh, well, this particular client brings in loads of money, so it's all fine. And then they go, and then all of a sudden, oh, I've got no leads, I've got no pipeline, I've got nothing going on. So a way you can improve the stability is by having lots of smaller clients. It's a personal preference, but there are things you can do in terms of how you structure your business to reduce that. But it doesn't ever go away. But in my experience with myself and people I work with, the upsides are so brilliant that you don't mind. It's worth it, so it's fine.
How many franchisees do you have now, Eleanor?
Oh, I think we're at 17 now. We've had some kind of come and go through and go out the other end. So we've had over 20 work with us. So it's 17 now, and another couple hopefully launching very soon. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, good.
That is fantastic. While we're on this kind of this conversation around sort of personal experiences of starting out, what would you say was the biggest learning curve for you when you started? I know we talked about misconceptions, but what about in terms of learning curve? And Katie, I'll ask you that one first.
I think there's a lot about you don't know what you don't know until you start doing it. So you do suddenly have to wrap your head around, marketing, sales, operations, what your internal processes are, how are you going to go and get client, all of that sort of thing, which you don't necessarily talk about before you get started. I think the biggest thing for me, though, was around finances and valuing my skills, because it's really easy to go, but I've sat in, I've been in HR for 20 years, but what does that translate to when I then go out and try and sell that? And I think that's a really common problem that people have, is how do I get confident in my own self-worth and what my value is, without trying to compare myself to loads of other people who might or might not be charging their own worth and have a similar or not experience to me. And I'm seeing smiles from Sam and Eleanor there going, that sounds like a familiar thing. But for me, it was around the biggest thing that I had was surround yourself with other business owners as quickly as you can, because actually it doesn't matter what industry you're in, everyone has that problem. And everyone has those challenges, and having a network of people you can talk it through with, that for me was the biggest thing that I feel like I should have done earlier, because that's helped me loads in the last couple of years.
I had absolutely no clue what it was going to look like to run a business, and I completely winged it for the first few years. And it's only been 2 years, so, read into that what you will. And whilst I know that, the purpose of this webinar is not to sales pitch, but Sam runs this absolutely incredible mastermind for HR business owners, which I have done. And I can remember nearly every session that we had thinking, oh, I don't do that.
You made that face every week.
I did, because every week the question would start with, how often? And I'd be like, never. I don't even know what that is. It was the things that you're talking about, Katie. Like I cannot manage, I couldn't manage my pocket money when I was 15.
Yeah.
I certainly can't manage, not a clue about finances, not a clue about sales and marketing. None of that stuff. So Sam, other programs are available, but, Sam had this program that gave me some structure. And I'll never forget, the one that really blew my mind was when you said, how often do you review your tech stack? And I was like, is that I pay every month that I don't actually use? Oh.
And she went,
my advice to anybody would be, don't wing it. Like, talk to someone like Sam, who can help you with this stuff. And, an alternative. We were originally with Tracy Hopkins was going to be on this session today, but isn't, unfortunately. So Tracy runs the HR Consultancy Business School. I did that as well when I very first started out. I think you did as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And Tracy was the person that made me post on LinkedIn for the first time. So we will come on to Mark. Somebody's asked a question about marketing and that kind of thing, because I can't quite believe how different my approach is now than it was a few years ago. So we'll come back to that one. But what was I on? Learning curve. That was it.
Learning curve. Yeah.
Yes. So
learning
Nikki,
curve.
let me ask
generally
you.
Learning curve business.
The whole thing is, it's like just
exactly that. Exactly that. Apart from all the stuff you don't do in HR, like finance, marketing, IT, everything else. For me, it's knowing that you don't have to do HR consultancy, that there are other things out there, as this webinar is demonstrating. And I took a good year sort of going, I don't really want to do policies and handbooks and ER and stuff, to sort of go, actually, I'm just going to do what my strengths align with. And I started doing some project work, and then I've just gone, no, I just want to do coaching and L&D and stuff now. And that's really, and then the minute you can start to work with your strengths and what aligns with you, that's when your success and your happiness happens, because you're not trying to be someone that you're not trying to do what you see everyone else doing or you think everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. I mean, I know, Eleanor, with your business, you talked a little at the beginning about how there's an approach that you have at face-to-face HR, which isn't your kind of grey and risk-averse HR. It's exactly. But it's that being able to create what you want. You did more with that facial expression than I think words would have done. So, tell me about what has been your biggest learning curve in building up.
Oh, so many. I was, I easily could. Yeah, this is my biggest problem with the questions that you sent in advance, Kirsty, was kind of narrowing it down, so I didn't spend the entire time talking. A couple of things for the learning curves. Pricing, again, I got that wrong for ages. Really common to undervalue ourselves. We're all terribly British and apologetic about wanting to charge money for what we're doing. The commonest thing with our new consultants is they get nervous about charging. They want to undercharge. They want to cut their prices. It's a hobby horse of mine. Do not do that. Price on your value. Your value is higher than you think. But we all value what we pay highly for. I use the handbag analogy sometimes. If you have a really expensive, nice Chanel handbag, you might look after it, keep it in a dust bag. You wouldn't shove it full of stuff. If you had a bag from Tesco's, you might treat it slightly differently. And small businesses, certainly, and any business actually, they won't choose their HR consultant based on who's the cheapest. You're not going to get more work by cutting your prices. So that was one thing I got very wrong, as do lots and lots of people. But the other thing is a marketing one. There were lots of marketing things I learned, but one of them was don't try and market yourself to everybody under the sun. And it's a strong instinct. I understand it. You're starting a business. You don't want to rule out anybody as a potential client. You think, I could do all of these things for all of these different people really easily. So I better market my business to say that I can do all of these things to everybody. And of course, what happens is you're not speaking to anybody because people are seeing what you're putting out there, your website, your social media, whatever you're doing, and thinking, I'm not really sure if this person's aiming at me and what I need. And the analogy I use for that, which Sam has already heard, is about using a plumber. If you need a plumber, you don't ask your general handy person. You go for a plumber. And if you live in, as I used to, a very old house, I used to live in a house that was built in 1540. When you're doing work in a house like that, you get a specialist. And it's the same with any kind of consultancy, whether it's a specialist in small businesses or a specialist in diversity and inclusion or whatever it is. You want someone who's really good and is speaking to you as a potential client. So somebody who says, I can do anything, I can do any kind of HR for any small business or huge corporate or anything, that no, you're going to miss many, many, many more clients than you will reach by doing that.
Kirsty, can I just add to that slightly?
Go for it, yeah.
I think what I've seen is people are very guilty of that, particularly when they start going networking. And I always use the example of you get somebody standing in a room saying, hi, my name's Katie, I'm an HR consultant and I can solve all your people problems. It drives me bonkers because actually you can't and you don't want to. And the way that I've described it to people before is if you start talking about things like ideal clients and avatars and all of that, their eyes glaze over and they're like, eh. Think about the managers you've worked with before that you have loved working with. Why did you love working with them? They're the ones you want to keep talking to. Steve over there, who's an absolute drain on your time and your energy, you probably don't want to work with him anymore. So stop putting out a message that might attract him. And it's for me, it's about that idea of, you're absolutely right, Eleanor. Don't try and be all things to all people because you end up being nothing to anyone.
Oh, that's a quote right there.
Yeah, and there's another piece here around just time. Going back to your time is precious and is now really expensive. And I loved Eleanor's analogy about the handbag. That's so true. Systems and processes, I hate them. Really do, but they will drive and create behaviors. They will tell you what's working in your business and not. And also, I remember so well, a couple of years ago, I was working with an HR consultant who spent 68% of their time within one networking group. They were full of HRs. So they were seeing people just like them the whole time. And they got less than 18% of their revenue from there. And when, they were really shocked when they realized why their business was being so held back, because they were comfortable just going to HR events with other HR consultants who were still under 2 years, who weren't earning what they wanted to earn. So they were all commiserating rather than being really uncomfortable about, what do I really want to do? You know, it's like, you've got to be that uncomfortable. Have your community where you can share the technical stuff and learn and build, but go to networking events where the business owners you want to work with are, you know, and just be the uncomfortable one.
It's a great point. The other thing that I would add also on the time thing, we massively overestimate how many people we can work with at once and what we can actually do at once. So and this is something that's come into play a lot with Evolving HR. So yes, I have a number of people in the Evolving HR directory who do similar things, but I genuinely believe that there is enough business out there for all of us. So it doesn't matter. I could have 5 recruitment consultants on this call or talking about recruitment, and they're all going to have enough jobs to fill because there are millions of organizations in the world. You can't work with all of them. And so, you know, one of the things that I've said now about evolving, you know, I talk about it as being for the rebels and the innovators in the HR world, because I don't want the boring, dull, grey people that don't want to do things differently. Whereas previously it was, you know, all HR people on the planet, I want to attract them to this. I don't. I want the ones that, you know, want to challenge their thinking. And so when we think about niche, you know, it does get, and I hate that word, I really do, because it's just what I got forced to do in like my early days of working on my own. But it doesn't have to be a certain type of person. It can be a certain type of attitude, or it can be a certain type of industry. So I've seen people out on LinkedIn who only do HR consultancy in the food industry, for example. And it's like, well, that makes it an awful lot easier to go out and target organizations that you want to work with, because you've been very clear that that is your area of expertise. You know, I would do it with like no financial services ever again. I've done enough. But
Anyone does.
Potentially everyone else. But yeah, it's we're 1:45 already, and I'm actually like abandoning the questions that we had, because I've got some really good questions in the Q&A, and it's like, well, why don't we just answer what people want to know? So one of the questions that we had here was from Chloe. What have you found are the most effective ways of marketing yourself, and have you had support from professionals with this? I'm just going to say I'm 100% LinkedIn. Like every piece of business I've ever got has been through LinkedIn. And I have deliberately grown my LinkedIn network over the last few years. I've got it from 8,000 to nearly 23,000 followers in the last 18 months. And I've done it deliberately, because what I do now for my business is I run Evolving HR and I run this app, and I want as many people to look at it as possible. So I have to make numbers of people see my stuff. Have I ever had any support with it on LinkedIn? No, never. Like I waffle on. I talk about what comes into my head. As it takes me. I'm very open and I share a lot, both personally and professionally, and that seems to have worked well for me. So that's as far as I've, you know, that's all I do. So yeah, let me ask you about marketing.
I think it's blended. So yeah, for me personally, yes, you know, we've created a sizable business from LinkedIn, and I'm very grateful for that. I have invested in learning how to use LinkedIn. We're investing now in how to use AI and sharing that learning with our communities and people we work with to keep them relevant. But I agree with you, Kirsty. You know, it's that showing up as yourself, and that hasn't always been easy. You know, I'm a middle-aged girl who's, you know, had to really embrace all of this stuff and really learn it. But I'm curious. I want to learn. How does it work? Why does it work? Can I break it? What happens if I do this? What happens if I press this button? You know, and I have real fun with it, and it's helped me travel the world, give great talks, create some fabulous memories, and have a real blended way of life. We do plan everything in terms of, okay, what's our theme? Where do we want to add the most value this week? What's really important? What are we listening to? And I do about 20 calls a week with new people so I'm constantly out there and listening and learning, and it's something that is voracious for me. So yes, we do invest heavily.
Side note here, Sam is the most effective networker I have ever met in my entire life. She is like a machine. And when she says she does 20 calls a week, she's not exaggerating. And they're quite often, because you focus a lot on the US market, they're quite often at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to get this woman on a Zoom call to catch up is nigh on impossible. She's
Yeah.
always on.
And now we've been in Australia as well. It's really fun. Australia and Dubai as well. We've just opened up. So, yeah.
So you're basically working 24/7 now, aren't you, is what you're saying?
Well, it's really good. It's really good. We've got new members of the team joining.
Eleanor, how about you in terms of marketing? What are some of the effective ways that you've found?
I mean, there's a lot of time wasted. I hate wasting time. I can't stand it. There's a lot of time wasted marketing. Sort of leading on from something I said earlier, don't waste time trying to convince, in our case, small businesses, but whatever sector you're aiming at, that HR is a great idea. Because then you're marketing to people who aren't ready to buy. Focus your marketing on the people who have already decided for whatever reason that they need an HR consultant or whatever it is you're doing, and aim at them, because they're obviously far more receptive to what you're saying. So there's a lot of wasted time there. I think, multiple strategy works well for our business. We have a 6-point marketing model that our consultants all use with a variety of different things. Networking is a really big thing for us, local networking. They use social media as well and various other bits and pieces, mail shots, the website, all sorts of things. So a lot of it we take care of. They do a lot of it as well. But I'd say work out who your ideal client is, and in what circumstances are they going to be looking for what you're selling, and when they look for that, where are they going to look? Are they going to do a Google search? Are they going to approach somebody they've seen on social media? Are they going to ask for a referral from their accountant or their IFA or their business coach? Those kind of people, really common for us. And that's where you need to be. That's where you need to be. So work out, okay, who are these people? Where are they going to look? And I need to make sure that I'm there. And having a multiple sort of strand strategy is really useful. I mean, I've had clients come back who have been on my mailing list for years, just sitting on my mailing list, getting something from me every week. And then 10 years later, they need something, or perhaps their business has changed and now they employ people they didn't before, all sorts of things. So if you meet somebody, put them on your mailing list, connect with them on social media, have one-to-ones with them, follow up with them, all of these things, and multiple touches, so that when they actually get to the point where they need whatever it is you're offering, they think, oh, I bet that Eleanor would be good at that. I'll contact her, or whoever it is. So I think that's really, really important. The other thing, I'm waffling again, there's so much in my head. Going back to what you said earlier, Kirsty, just an example. One of our consultants, just a few years ago, one of the consultants we had at the time, who's now actually moved on from HR entirely after being with us for, I think, 9 years. But at the time, she was doing some open training, people management training. She was putting a course on that was going to be open to businesses in the local area. And she was trying to market this course, and she's not done anything like this before. She was trying to market it, and I had a catch up with her, and she was putting posts on LinkedIn about people management training, and she wasn't getting much traction. And I said, let's be more specific. And rather than just saying, are you a people manager with problems? I said, pick a sector. Have you got people already from a sector signed up? That kind of thing. And there was a sector that she had a couple of people. And I said, okay, well, rather than posts that are generic, are you struggling with people management? Why don't you do posts saying something like, are you a busy general manager in a hospitality environment, struggling with managing a low-paid flexible workforce? Really specific, because then if somebody is that, and they can think, oh, that's me. I need that. And she filled the course very easily doing that. So I suppose it's similar to kind of not appealing to everybody, but it's really thinking about who you are aiming at and talking to that person, not trying to just chuck stuff out there and hope.
That's your kind of area of expertise as well, isn't it, Kate? It's like knowing your audience from a writing perspective and making sure that you speak to them.
Yeah, I'd agree with sort of with both Sam and Eleanor, in the sense of some of it comes down to how much cash have you got to be able to put towards it. So, you know, Sam's got a bigger business than I have, so she's got a bigger marketing budget. She can afford to do more things and be in more spaces. But Eleanor's also right, you've got to be where your clients are. So actually the thing to start with in terms of your marketing is knowing who they are. Because if you don't know who they are, you know, we're back to you're doing all things for all people, doesn't help you. And it's also about being really clear on who you are. So a lot of HR consultants that I've come across have come out of corporate because there was a values challenge somewhere along the way. They didn't like the way that it was being done. They didn't like the way that the corporate environment was treating HR, that sort of thing. And actually, if you can work out what some of your values are before you start, it helps you break out of that corporate way of writing a lot quicker, because then you start to talk about the things that matter to you and to your clients, and you find that common ground, as opposed to putting out, well, by the way, the legislation's changing. You know, have you made sure you've reviewed all your policies? Which, okay, there's technically a piece in there that, yes, some people do need to be aware of that. But that's probably not going to get you a following and kind of build your reputation and your brand for doing what it is that you're brilliant at. So I think knowing who you're helping, the problems that you're really great at solving, and what your values are that underline that, those are the three places where I would start on your marketing.
That's great advice. It's really good advice. So I'm conscious that we've got about 8 minutes left, and we haven't really talked about a huge amount other than HR consultancy. So I feel like there needs to be a second one of these where we talk about some alternative career paths post in-house HR. Let me ask all of you, when you look back, what is the one piece of advice you wish someone had given you before you started out running your own business? And let me ask you first, Nikki.
I think to have faith and believe in yourself, because there was far too many times when I panicked and found myself looking for jobs, and I, you know, just having that belief, and that if you put the effort in, if you show up consistently, if you develop relationships, if you stay true to yourself and do what you want to do, and, you know, work within your strengths and everything that aligns with you, the stars will align, and you'll get there with hard work. Of course, it doesn't just land on your plate, but yeah, far too many times I panicked and started applying for jobs again. And it takes about 3 years.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. Somebody asked for a link to Sam's program. I've just put a link to her website in the chat there. I will send this out as well. I'll send everybody's details out when I send the email tomorrow about the recording. But please do follow up. Katie, what is one piece of advice you wish you'd been given before you started out on your own?
That sales doesn't mean being in your face, kind of aggressive, all those stereotypical views of your kind of car salesman, if you like. That actually there's a lot of different ways of doing sales, and it's about finding the way and the process that works for you, and that you have to get some no's before you get the yeses, and your no's aren't a failure, they're a route to success. It's a thing from Go for No, which is it's about 74 pages. It's a very short read by, I think it's Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton, but that for me is well worth a read for anyone who's starting out, who's a bit concerned about the whole sales process and selling themselves and building that confidence.
What's it called, Katie? Because I like to put these links in as well. Go for No.
Go for No. I can send you the link.
Yeah, please do. I did that last week. We had a ton of books and podcasts and things that people came up with, and I'm like frantically writing them down so I can send them to people. Eleanor, how about you? What's a piece of advice that you wish you'd been given?
You know, I was having a dig around over the weekend, and I found a very old business plan that I did in early 2009, I think it was. So it's probably about 6 months after I started, and I was absolutely horrified. And I was I was horrified because I was very organised. You know, it was very planned and everything, so that was all good. But the amount of time, money, effort, headspace I was spending and organising myself into spending doing things that I now know were never going to work just horrifies me. I've got this all planned in. I'll do this, and I'm now looking at it thinking that was never. What were you doing? That was never going to work. Never going to work. And I went far too long that I did that, and it's very, very common. And that's one of the biggest reasons I started the franchise, really, is because I spent so long getting things wrong and not knowing what was going to work and experimenting. I didn't want people to do that. So I would say really one of the biggest pieces of advice is just get some help. I know it's hard at the beginning when you haven't got lots of income coming in, but you know, trust me, get some proper help with the marketing, with a framework, with all of the things that we've talked about today, really. Because if you can generate income much more quickly, because you're not faffing around wasting your time cold calling like I was, honestly, don't cold call. You know, that's the other thing. I spent I tried everything, and it used to take me forever because I'd have to psych myself up beforehand, thinking, oh, I'm going to call, and something might be rejected, and somebody might be mean to me, and then I'd do the call, and I'd have to calm down after. Honestly, I did get one really good client from it, completely coincidentally. Nothing. Oh, it's just just coincidence. But you know, there's no need to waste as much time and effort and money and everything as I did just getting things wrong. There is advice out there in various forms. There is support out there. And if it means you start bringing money in much quicker, it pays for itself. It really does if you can do that. So there you go.
Sam, how about you? What advice do you wish you were given?
Well, one's not going to surprise you, Kirsty. This is not a sprint. I'm the one that thinks it's okay to do 11 billion things in a week, and then I wonder why I'm so tired at the end of it. I've had to really learn to self-regulate, and I still don't get that right. And I've been building businesses for 25 years. I think the other thing is, you know, to regulate, work around your body's algorithms and your mental algorithms. I've worked really hard on that, and I'm probably way more productive now than I've ever been because of that. And secondly, embrace a no. I'm the biggest failure I know. I've had more no's than anyone else in my life, and I'm good with that. A maybe will kill your business. A no is only a no for now until the finances are sorted. A no is a good thing, and it's, you know, I've turned most no's into a yes, which is probably why I do what I do today. But don't settle for a maybe. If you've got 12 maybes, it could kill your business. If you've got 12 no's, you can convert 7 or 8 of those into a yes.
I love that. I need to talk to you about maybes. That's really interesting. Okay, very last thing.
Either a yes or a no, because you know where you stand. I'd rather
a yes or a no.
Because you know where you stand.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, if somebody could do just one thing today to move closer to self-employment, what would you suggest? And I'll put you on the spot here. I'm going to go to Eleanor first.
I think the biggest thing is actually just make a definite decision, because people think, oh, I'll do it one day, and then all of a sudden another year's gone by and you haven't done it, and that's really, really common. So I would say make a definite decision, and if you need to feel the fear, give yourself a date and say, I'm going to launch my business in, you know, January 2026 or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter how long it is. And then you've got something that's happening and you're working your way towards it, and you can work back from there in terms of what I need to do to get myself ready, the various things you need to do, making decisions about what kind of business it is even. But if you just think, oh, one day I'll do it when the time is right, the time will never be right. You need to actually make a decision. Yes, I am going to do it, and I'm going to do it then. Therefore, now I can think, right, that's happening at that date. So therefore I need to, you know, consider finances. I need to, all the things that you need to do, you can start doing it if you know there's a date happening. So I think that would be a big step for lots of people.
Brilliant. Like that one. Nikki, what would you say? One thing to move closer to it.
Align with your why and be determined and stick with that. There's something making you look. So what is that? And empower it. And then think, well, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work out, you can find another job.
It's very true. I always thought the worst thing that could happen to me was getting fired, and then I did get fired, and it wasn't actually that bad because I ended up doing this and I love it. So it was actually the best thing.
It could be the best thing that ever happened.
How about you, Katie? One step closer to self-employment.
I'm with Eleanor. Make the decision. But actually, if the thing that you're struggling with is whether or not you can make that decision, I'd start with make a bloody great list of the projects that you've done and you've loved. Because sometimes the sticking point is, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. So if that's your sticking point, make a list of the projects that you've loved. They might be inside of work, they might be outside of work, they might be volunteer stuff, they might be hobbies. And look at what are the threads that bring all that together. You know, what are the things that make you go, yeah, love doing that, want to do more of it? Because that will then help you to say, I can either facilitate that in a different way through my current job and hobbies or whatever, or actually, no, the only way I'm going to do that is by setting a date and making the decision.
Mm-hmm. And Sam?
I think it's a combination of everyone. And, you know, you said one thing. And where my mind goes is, what is the outcome you were looking for your life? And I think that's bigger than, do you want to, your own HR consultancy? Do you want to do something different? Do you want to go into, say, Eleanor's Great Franchise? What is the outcome you're looking for your life? And that's the biggest thing. When I first started this business, I started with I am an international business coach for the HR community. What is your I am? And if you ask me the one thing, define your I am and the rest will follow.
Oh, I love that. And the other thing I would say, and I'm not a coach anymore, so this isn't me selling myself at all. It's really, really helpful to work through some of this with a coach if you find it difficult to try and get some of those answers that the ladies have just suggested on your own. That's what I did. I worked with a coach, and I have continued to work with coaches to help me kind of work it through. Even doing something that might sound straightforward, like a values exercise, that for me was instrumental in helping me decide what I did and didn't want to do going forward, and what I didn't want my life to look, what I did want my life to look like. So I do actually have a free values exercise. If anybody is interested in getting a copy of that and working out what their values are, I'm happy to send it through. So just ping me a note on LinkedIn and I will do that. But yeah, I would say thank you very, very much, ladies. That has been, I feel like we barely scratched the surface. But
I think we could have done a whole day webinar on this, to be honest, guys.
Actually, yeah, no, I'm seriously thinking we must do another one with a slightly, and cover some of the other stuff that we didn't cover today, because the questions that were coming through, some of them are really specific, and I didn't get to Nikki's question about pricing structures, because that just did feel a little bit specific. But yeah, let's have a chat about doing a follow-up, because I think there's a lot of people that are interested in this. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining me today.
Well,
and thank you for
having us.
It's been great.
It's been great. I do love these, I have to say. I find them such great conversations. But excellent. So next week we've got it's the 6th. So I think it's Thursday next week, the 6th. We've got a webinar on using AI in HR, which is I think that one's likely to be a pretty good conversation as well. So really, really pleased with some of the topics that we've got covered at the moment. It's great. So thank you ever so much, ladies, for joining me. And we'll see everybody else next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.